Welcome to our Integral Relationship Group. Our overarching theme is that love is unconditional, but relationships are not. And before we explore and practice the conditional aspects of love, we will have an experience through a meditation followed by a circle in which you will experience unconditional love. Now, spiritual teachers often tell us that the ego cannot love. It always wants something. And in Buddhism, we learn that the ego is driven by attachment, by desire, and by fear or hatred. So in this meditation that I want to share with you and that we practice, we go through several layers of the ego to arrive at a state which we may call the pure witness. And when we speak of unconditional love, we don't just mean to love a person unconditionally, but to embrace, to surrender to, and to be present with everything that arises in our awareness. So this meditation that I invite you to will take us through 4 different layers, which we may call the material, the physical body, the mind, and our heart experience, our feelings, even the experience of enlightenment, as you will see. So, and then after the meditation, you will get up and engage in the unconditional love circle, where you will hopefully be able to hold this state of pure present moment to moment awareness while you engage and eye gaze with your partner. So when you practice meditation, it is advised that you sit with your spine erect and not leaning against anything. And ideally, if you can, sit on a floor, on a pillow, on a cushion, as I do right now, but you can also sit on a chair or any other place that you're comfortable with. And we always begin by taking a deep breath into our abdomen. So if you put your hand on your belly and take a deep breath and feel how your belly, your abdomen gently rises and falls. And this meditation we can also describe as a subject-object meditation in which the subject or the self or the witness becomes aware of an object. And in the end, in non-dual awareness, the subject and the object collapse into one. But we start with this duality, if you will, of subject and object before we can go to a non-dual state. So there is no non-duality without duality first. And I do this first part of the subject being aware of material objects by either inviting people to look around in the room and to notice very consciously objects in the room. Sometimes I point out when people enter the room that they may only notice a few things, and of course mostly people are focused on other people, and that's fine. But we rarely, with the curiosity of a child, look around and just notice, like even little things, be fascinated by the leaf of a plant or a pot or a picture on the wall or even a little speck of dust on the floor or anything. So we just look around in the room very consciously, maybe noticing some things that are a little odd or unique or also beautiful and nice. And in this, we realize that there is something alive in us, a consciousness, a subject, a self, that is aware of objects outside of us, and that we are not these objects, which allows us to disidentify. And that does not mean dissociate. There's a difference between disidentifying and dissociating from objects, so we are no longer defined by them. I recently saw a person walking and had a t-shirt on that said, "I am what I wear." Right? And very often we are very attached, very identified by what we wear, our jewelry, the material objects we possess. And even I recently got upset when somebody stole some things from me. And I noticed how quickly, I and many other people can get to attach to material things that we think we own. So there's nothing wrong in having things, but the attachment puts us somewhat in a cognitive prison, and that is not unconditional love and surrender and presence with whatever arises and whatever is. The other tool I use to show the material object, I do that more in the mindfulness class, is to hand out a raisin to people. And often when there is a group and everybody picks a raisin out of the jar, at one point I may say, "Oh, you don't get a raisin, just pass on the jar to the next person." And that usually puzzles not only the person who doesn't get a raisin, but the rest of the group. And I point out how quickly we get entitled to having something that we didn't even know a minute before we would get. Just because everybody else got it, we feel we are entitled to or deserve to get it as well. Then I ask the person who didn't get it how they felt and how everybody else felt, and then I say, "Well, you're very special, you can take 3 raisins, everybody else only got 1. And then of course the other people may go like, "Well, why is she getting 3 now and I only got 1?" So it's just a nice, very playful way to point out how quickly we get attached to things, or how we desire things that we don't get, and how we can go into fear and hatred when we feel we're unfairly treated. So once we establish that experience of that there is an I, a subject, a witness that is aware of physical objects, I invite people to lower their gaze or to close their eyes, to take a deep breath, and to feel into our physical body. And I'm going to go through this meditation very quickly. And of course, you can find your own pace. This meditation usually takes half an hour. And so I invite people to feel the surface that they're sitting on, the gravity between their body and the earth. And to wiggle their toes a little bit. And then to relax their feet, their legs, their abdomen, feeling the belly rise and fall. To take back their shoulders so that their heart is fully opening and radiating love into the circle and receiving love. To relax their shoulders, their arms, their hands. To turn their head to the left and right and front and back, and finding that perfect balancing point for their head on the top of their spine, and to relax their face and their jaw. And when the face and the jaw is fully relaxed, then usually the lips slightly part. And then just to bring more and more awareness with every in and out breath into their physical body, relaxing every muscle. And a sign that the body is fully relaxed is when there is a slight tinkling on the skin and we feel the pulsating of the blood through our arteries and veins. Because when our muscles are relaxed, our arteries and veins and even the little capillaries under the skin, they widen, and there is life-giving oxygen and nutrients, micronutrients get delivered to every cell in the body, in the physical body. And then we awaken to the realization that we are not our body, but that we are the subject, the self, the witness, the consciousness that is aware of having a body, but we are not defined. Our self is not defined by our body, by our age, by our gender, by our looks, by our height. And this also allows us to take care of our body, be the steward of our body, so our body can serve us to move around in the world, to experience in the world to the fullest, through healthy nutrition, exercise, sleep, meditation, body work, medication as necessary. Everything that we can give as a gift to our body so that it can serve us in the best possible way. And then I invite people to bring their focused attention to their in and out breathing and to take 10 conscious, relaxed, natural in and out breaths, feeling their belly rise and fall, and staying present, counting their in and out breaths in the moment without drifting off into thought. And if they want, they can count how often they breathe in and out. I usually breathe in 8 times per minute. And ideally we want to be able to stay present with our in and out breathing for at least 20 minutes, so that would be counting 160 breaths without drifting off into thought or more. But in the group I usually suggest 10, and after 6 in and out breaths, I say, if your mind drifted off into thought, bring it back to your conscious in and out breathing, because most people, when they have never done this practice before, their mind drifts off after 5 or 6 in and out breaths. So as a facilitator, you want to be able to do about 160 in and out breaths without drifting off into thought, just as a practice. And once we stayed long enough present with our in and out breathing, I invite people to use the metaphor of a cat watching a mouse hole, waiting for the mouse to stick out its head. And using this metaphor to watch their mind, waiting for the next thought to arise. And then if a thought arises, to release it, not to give it any energy, not to follow it along, and to use their breath and the body. This is why we start with the body and the breath as an anchor, like an anchor on a big ship, to come back to present moment awareness in the here and now. And again, to watch the mind waiting for another thought to arise, and you can do this as long as you feel is useful. And then what will happen for some people, most people, eventually for all people who practice this, is that there will be a pause between one thought ending and a new thought arising. And we awaken to the realization that we are not our mind, but that we are the witness, the consciousness, the awareness, the self that is aware of having thoughts, but that we are not our thoughts. And when participants, when we drop into this space of witnessing thought or no thought, and this is important because some people think enlightenment or awakening means to no longer think. That's a big misconception. The important part is to be the witness, to disidentify from thought, just as we disidentify from material objects and the body. So we still have material objects, we still have a body, and we may still have thought, but we're no longer identified. We're in the present moment. And of course, at this point, it becomes somewhat hard to speak. But there is a sense of stillness, of presence, of joy, of aliveness, often of intuition or creativity. New novel thoughts, ideas arise from this ground. And there is also a sense of connectedness with everything that arises. And along comes the deep capacity for empathy and compassion, for deep connection with other humans who are present. And it is a sense of acceptance, of unconditional love for everything that arises, without judgment, without hatred, without attachment, without fear, fear being the opposite of love. And this is what many spiritual seekers are seeking, this state of full awareness and enlightenment, and what many spiritual teachers are pointing to. This awareness, you are not your mind, you are not your thoughts, you are not your body, you are not physical objects. You are the witness of all these dimensions. But they no longer define who you are. And you are also not your feelings. Because along with the mind, watching the mind, you can also watch your feelings, your emotions. And when you have this realization, you may even awaken to the realization that you are not your experiences. not even the experience of full enlightenment, of full awakening. And when you connect to this realization that there is a ground of all being, a source, or some people may call it God or the Absolute, from which all experience and everything arises. That there is a subject that cannot be made into an object. That this ground was never born, never entered the stream of time, and will never die. That is infinite and eternal, timeless and spaceless. And therefore isn't separate from anything that manifests. And cannot be spoken about, cannot be thought of, cannot be experienced. There's no more you that is separate from this ground of all being.